So Matt, tell me about your business.
Oh, well, 5 or 6 years ago we started selling IT components, which is what I've been doing for 10, 15 years. Had a lot of customers on the island, supplied Maplins with a lot of their brown box equipment. And I saw the WEEE law coming into force about 18 months in the future and thought it may well be something that needed to be addressed on the island. It took a further year and a half after that for it actually to become law, so it was sort of 3 years from inception through to actually starting to get a throughput of waste. But from there, as you can see, haven't stopped since.
So what are the WEEE regulations?
WEEE regulations are a European rule basically denoting that anything that requires an electrical current to operate must be recycled and cannot be landfilled. Every year more and more items seem to get added to it. The battery regulations came in last year, which means household batteries now have to be recycled. Obviously the fridges have been a regulation for 15 odd years now. Fluorescent tubes we've expanded into, but yeah, as the time goes on it gets more and more onerous, the laws. Any typewriters, lamps, desk fans, as well as the obvious PCs and printers cannot be disposed of in your normal waste streams. You have to have it collected separately and paperwork to prove that it's been done so. And if you're ISO registered as a company, you definitely need to make sure that the paperwork's correct.
And do you work solely for companies, or do you do domestic waste as well?
Occasionally we have a domestic pickup from somebody who wants to know it's being recycled or has no access to get it to the civic amenity site, but mainly 99% is business to business waste.
Is there sufficient awareness amongst businesses of these regulations?
Amongst the larger businesses and those with an ISO rating, definitely, but obviously the smaller the business, they have less staff to be aware of all of the legislation, and obviously there is a cost involved, and it's another cost unfortunately, but law states it is a cost and that's the way it is.
And how expensive is it?
I think very good value. It depends. I mean, anywhere from, we will collect a PC from a business for £5, and that £5 includes the data disposal. If you want that certificated, it's an extra £1.
So people can be confident that their data isn't going to be viewed by anybody?
No, it gets destroyed on site. We destroy it all on site. We destroy their hard drives so they physically cannot be read, and then every month or so we drive the resultant scrap and we see it smelted, because it's obviously 90% aluminium, so it's then in front of our eyes literally melted into nothing.
So computer equipment, is there a market for you to resell that?
There is a market if the specification is high enough. Unfortunately on the island, the waste we tend to collect doesn't have a high enough specification to be of value even in a reuse situation, which is unfortunate, so we have to recycle it, but obviously it does get 100% recycled.
What actually happens? You collect a load of electrical equipment from a business, you bring it back here, then what occurs?
Well, we simply will ensure that there's no data storage in there. We remove any hard drives that we find and we physically destroy those, because we're ISO 27001 registered, which means highest level of data security. So all the methods of recording data are removed, and we simply, if it's not of a high enough spec, we simply stack it into large stillages, and when we have an Arctic full, it gets sent to Wales.
And what happens in Wales?
Unfortunately, it gets put into Europe's largest machine that simply just chunks it into a million pieces, and it gets fully recycled, metals, plastics, and gets sent back to China, and 3 months later it's back as a new computer.
What about mercury in fluorescent tubes? How's that handled?
We don't touch fluorescent tubes except for the bulking. All we do is we bulk them up, and we have a company from the mainland that comes over. They come over at the same time that they do the civic amenity site, and they arrive in a very large lorry, and they physically crush all of them within the confines of the lorry with all the filters and everything, and they take the drums of crushed glass away. We don't crush anything on site. There's a lot of health implications to it, and it's just something we wouldn't touch.
So how much of your business is on the island? Because you also operate on the mainland, don't you?
I would say probably 60-40 on the island, but the mainland is getting more and more demanding of us every day. Every week we seem to have more customers come over, and we do a lot of collections around Hampshire, collecting commercial fridges for various businesses, because there seems to be very little coverage in the south of England, full stop, the main people that do it are the larger waste management companies, and their charges are a lot more. And people find us on the web, phone us up for a quote, and we usually get there within 3 or 4 days. Even though we are an island-based company, we're over 2 or 3 days a week, so we can usually slot them in within a week.
In terms of waste generally, how good or how bad is the island in dealing with waste?
We're as good as we can be with the infrastructure we have. But saying that, I mean, in the future, with the landfill filling up, we have to avoid the fact that we will soon be swimming in our own waste. We need a bit of a joint-up plan, I think, with private companies having a big input into it as well. There are some very good companies on the island doing some very good work, but with the sites they have, they can't handle anywhere near the amount of waste that is needed to sort of divert much more from landfill.
What are the future technologies? What should we be doing to avoid landfill?
Well, the manufacturers need to be manufacturing more recyclable, environmentally friendly products. As an island, we need to really look at some sort of big infrastructure where we have an energy from waste plant that is designed from the ground up for purpose, not designed for something and then changed 3 or 4 years later. It needs a much bigger site with room to expand if need be, and the ideal would be all the waste on the island going through the front door, being filtered and separated, and what has to be landfilled then being landfilled. But obviously that's a very big jump from what we have now.